The doctor said that John had terminal lung cancer and only had 3 months to live. He glanced at the cigarette in his hand and turned around to get a lighter. John lit another cigarette to calm down. The doctor advised him to prepare himself mentally, but he said no. Even though John said that, he still went to the pharmacy to buy a bottle of cough syrup. Perhaps John wanted to prolong his life. After he saw the advertising slogan on the signboard, it seemed to imply that John's end was near. After all, he smoked at least 30 cigarettes a day from the age of 15 to 35. So it wasn't surprising that John had lung cancer. Even though the disease was incurable, he wasn't afraid of death at all. He still lived like a normal person. The next morning, John threw himself into a special job. When he arrived, the people in the hallway all made way and looked at John with respect. Because his job was an exorcist, he went to the room at the end of the hallway and carefully placed the cigarette on the cabinet. He immediately stepped onto the bed and slowly bent down and gently stated his name. He slowly informed her that he was John Constantine. After a round of trembling and screaming, the girl suddenly fell into silence, as if she had no life left, which made him feel very strange. As soon as John leaned over to listen to the victim's breathing, the demon suddenly appeared and attacked, startling him. Immediately after that, John shouted for everyone to find a mirror, at least 3 feet high. Then, he quickly pulled the electric wire and used a chair to break the window. When everyone brought the mirror, John used the electric wire to tie the 2 ends of the mirror. Then he hung it suspended right above the girl. John asked everyone to close their eyes. He seriously instructed that no matter what happened, they were not to open their eyes. When the demon saw this, he immediately wanted to escape John's control. Luckily, he had quick hands, so he was able to control the demon and finished reciting the remaining spell. While John made it appear, he did not forget to scold and provoke it. Then John ordered his teammates to quickly pull the wire. He wanted to push the mirror out, but it was caught in the door frame. Seeing that, John immediately decided to grab the wire. He tried his best to pull the mirror out before the demon escaped. And the girl finally returned to normal. John finished all these things and took the extinguished cigarette out of the room. He was about to light a cigarette after finishing his work. Suddenly, John noticed the strange graffiti on the wall. Combined with the strange exorcism today, the demon tried its best to pass through the girl's body to the real world. It seemed that everything was about to happen in hell, but those things were no longer important to a dying man like him. Before leaving, John told his companion to pay more attention to the sounds from the underworld and took the amulet from his neck. John thought that his partner did not need this protection. He advised his friend to calm down. Everything would be fine in a few days. His friend had no choice but to listen to John. As soon as John got home, he coughed up blood because his lung cancer was getting worse. But after coughing, he sat on the bed and lit a cigarette. Most people in this world were afraid of death, including him. The reason why he dragged his sick body to try to exorcise demons was because as long as he sent enough demons to hell, the accumulated merit would help him go to heaven after death. But the previous abnormality gave him a feeling that a storm was coming. So early the next morning, John went to a friend named Beeman to prepare to update his magical equipment. He gave Beeman a small toy that he had always wanted, and it was a small toy of the Indian shepherd Krishna, which made Beeman very moved. Seeing this, John also told him his purpose for wanting new goods. Beeman took out the rare items he had recently obtained one by one, which were the assassination bullet fragments taken from the Pope, the holy water taken from the Jordan River, the Amityville screaming beetle, and the extremely powerful exorcism weapon, the dragon air gun. John happily accepted everything. Then he asked Beeman to look up ancient books. He wanted to see if there was any precedent of demons coming to the real world, because demons can manipulate humans, but they absolutely cannot cross dimensions to the human world. This is the rule agreed upon by Satan and God. Beeman agreed and gave John a final treasure. That night, it was pouring rain. After John said goodbye to Beeman, he braved the heavy rain to the city center library. When the doctor announced his illness, he knew that he did not have much longer to live. But here was an existence that could help him prolong his life. It was the Archangel Gabriel, the representative of God on earth. With his sharp eyes, Gabriel knew John's intention to come here, but the angel flatly refused to help him. Gabriel also asked John if he was still trying to do good deeds to get into heaven. Seeing that he was rejected, John thought that the demons he had destroyed were enough to help John John enter heaven, but the angel said that it was not that easy, which made John feel angry. He thought that he had worked diligently for God for so many years, and the number of demons expelled was countless, so he had no merit but had to suffer, and God would not let him go. Hearing that, the angel explained that the nature of John's actions was wrong, because those actions were done for himself, and he did not respect God's faith. John was a typical selfish person. His mouth always said noble words, but in fact, it was all for personal gain, so that after death, John could go to heaven. He was a person without faith, and only believed in his own selfishness. It seemed that John was touched by the right thought. So right after that, he threw a Bible on the ground right in front of Gabriel. John said that Gabriel completely did not understand people like them, and he thought that Gabriel was the most deserving bastard to go to hell. Even when facing an angel, he was still arrogant, but after venting his anger, he seemed to have lost all his strength and knelt down on the ground. John angrily asked Gabriel why God chose him and whether they had a grudge against him. John was born with a pair of yin and yang eyes, so he could see demons since he was a child, but his parents did not believe him. They sent him to a mental hospital and received electroshock therapy. In the end, unable to bear the torment, he chose to give up his life. That action committed the most unforgivable sin in Catholicism and was sent to hell. Although John was saved after 2 minutes of clinical death in the present world, the 2 short minutes in hell were as long as 2 lifetimes. It was this horrifying experience of hell that made John swear that no matter what, he could never return to that terrible place. That was why John tried to frantically exorcise God, hoping that God would forgive him for his foolish behavior, but Gabriel's next words completely shattered his last ray of hope. Gabriel said that John would die young, because he had been smoking 30 cigarettes a day since he was 15, and the things that John tried to do were not from the heart, so he would definitely be sent to hell, without anyone being able to save him. Meanwhile, the rain outside the library was getting heavier, and John lit a cigarette out of habit with a heavy heart. Then he couldn't help but complain to a strange woman beside him. He said that God's sense of humor was really bad, because his jokes really wanted to kill people. John walked straight into the rain, ignoring the calls of the person behind him. Then John bought another bottle of cough syrup. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, because John felt that he had been blatantly taken advantage of by God for many years. The demons that he had sent to hell were all waiting for him to go there. They weren't waiting for him to go down to play, but each one wanted to skin him, pull out his tendons, and tear him to pieces. Even Satan had declared that he would personally come to harvest his soul. Now John had no way back. He was really scared. The discomfort in his body made him even more exhausted. But at this moment, a crab suddenly crawled onto his hand asking for some fire. It turned out that this fire borrower was a demon made up of insects and rodents. John immediately rushed to fight the demon. Thanks to the screaming beetles, the demon had difficulty maintaining its form for the time being. It advised him not to meddle in other people's business. This was already the second demon to appear directly in the current world. The first demon to appear was the one that possessed the young girl last time. It was clear that the other party had come to warn him because of this, but unfortunately, this guy was completely wrong about John's personality. This warning backfired. It made him, who originally didn't want to meddle in other people's business, feel interested. After all, John didn't have much time left, so he would rather find some joy in the remaining days. Because he wanted to investigate further, John prepared to go to a neutral bar between the 3 genders. The bar was called the Midnight Club, and his disciple Chas still wanted to follow him in there to broaden his horizons. John agreed to let Chas in, which made him happy and excited. But then, John extinguished his hopes. John read the password and calmly walked in, while Chas was stopped because it was a bar that only people with special abilities were qualified to enter. That place was actually a hotel that intersected hell, heaven, and earth. It welcomed all kinds of customers such as hybrid angels or demons, and anonymous talents from all over the world. The owner of Midnight was not on any side, so no side was allowed to cause trouble there. He was a famous person who only cared about maintaining order in his bar. He said that the night before, he had seemed to hear thunder, so the owner of Midnight thought it had been the sound of Satan's hunger. He said that Satan would personally come to harvest John's soul, but John was not afraid at all. It was obvious that Midnight hadn't liked John much, and John didn't mind, because he had too many people who didn't like him anyway. He told Midnight about the recent movements of the demons. His purpose of coming here was to borrow Midnight's special chair. Midnight reminded John that it could kill him, and he was also a neutral faction, so as long as the balance was not broken, he would not interfere. Even if what John said was true, Midnight, as a person of order, would absolutely absolutely not break his principles. He did not want to get involved in any faction's troubles. But at this moment, an uninvited guest arrived. He appeared with a coin in his hand. John immediately recognized this person as a high-level demon named Balthazar. Seeing that the two were about to fight, Midnight immediately slammed the table and stood up. He loudly warned that the rule here was not to fight in his territory. Balthazar laughed because he heard that John did not have much longer to live. So he was very hungry because he was about to have fresh meat to eat. Midnight said he had something to tell John. Balthazar heard John's cough and made a mocking sound. At the same time, his friend Hennessy did not forget John's request. He used his hand to stroke the newspapers like an information detector. Each case suspected of having the participation of the devil was heard by Hennessy one by one. He heard someone stuffing Holly's body, and on the body, Hennessy also discovered traces of the victim having been raped. The suspect used a small saw so the head was almost severed, and the eyeballs were also gouged out. And finally, the case of a woman named Isabel passing away in a mental hospital. That death made him realize something unusual. John had just returned home after being harshly rejected by Midnight, when suddenly an uninvited guest came right outside the door. Angela told John that they had met before, and everything after that really seemed like fate. John recalled the 3 times he had met this woman. The first time was in the elevator at the hospital, when she asked him to press the elevator button for her, but he didn't care. The second time was at the downtown library. When he didn't give in to her, she also realized that he was a rude person before. The third time was at the library door, when John was complaining about God. All 3 accidental encounters were not very pleasant, but the woman showed her police badge and asked John for help. There was always trouble, but John still reluctantly let Angela into the house. She told him that she suspected her sister had been murdered a few days ago. Before she passed away, she was being treated at a mental hospital, but then the victim suddenly jumped from the top floor there. John said that she had just said that her sister had done something stupid, but now she thought that her sister would never do such a thing. Angela explained that her sister was Isabel. She was a devout Catholic, so it was absolutely impossible for her to commit a crime and leave this world. Angela investigated through the police station, and she knew that John was the most famous occult master in this area. The more important reason was that in the surveillance footage on the night of the incident, Isabel called his name before acting, so Angela hoped that John could help her investigate the truth about her sister's case. Angela thought that at least with his experience, John could help her point out a direction. John understood, but asked Angela to leave. He was already filled with worries, so he didn't have much energy to take on the job. At this moment, the large amount of holy water stored in the house suddenly began to shake, and outside the window, swarms of demons flew by. It seemed that things had become more interesting. John rushed out the door and quickly found Angela, who had left in anger. He explained to Angela a knowledge that sounded very unreasonable. A long time ago, God and Satan made a pact that no one could directly interfere in the human world, but they could only indirectly influence or entice people to choose heaven or hell. The 3 realms of heaven, hell, and humanity existed in parallel, but they were different in space, so people could never force themselves to cross them. After John explained, Angela really felt that this statement was extremely unreasonable, but at this time, darkness was enveloping. The situation was not good, so John quickly pulled Angela under the only source of light, which was the statue of the Virgin Mary. Then he took out a piece of cloth and wrapped it around her hand and told her to close her eyes. Angela wondered why, but he didn't care. The holy light burst out, causing the evil spirits to retreat. The street returned to normal, and only the strong smell of sulfur lingered in the air. John said that this was the smell of hell, and anyone who smelled it for the first time would have the same symptoms as her. These evil people of hell appeared together at all costs. Obviously, because Angela was standing in front of him, John suddenly thought of the recent actions of the Hell faction. He immediately understood something. Immediately after that, John followed Angela to her apartment first. Then he took a basin of water and placed it in front of the chair. Water is the most important means for John to move between hell and reality. Then he picked up the cat that Isabel had raised. Cats are animals with very strong spirituality, and they can also travel between the 2 worlds of yin and yang. After everything was ready, John put his feet in the basin of water. He needed Angela to leave the room, and she cooperated. John stroked the cat and said that he hated this the most. He and the cat stared at each other. At the moment Angela was about to close the door, the light bulb suddenly flickered. The basin of water boiled, and time froze. The place emitted a strong smell of sulfur, along with the high temperature that made everything seem to melt. He was also considered a former resident of hell, so he didn't show too much discomfort. Surrounded by scavengers, John also smelled the scent of the living and started moving. John also quickly discovered the woman in white in front, and that was Angela's twin sister. When Isabel saw him, she immediately took off the bracelet on her hand, as if she wanted to leave some information for John. The moment he grabbed the bracelet, John immediately used one hand to smash the holy water bottle to return to reality. At this moment, Angela opened the door. She saw John in the room, steaming like he had just come out of a furnace. Immediately after that, John said that they were twins, and that Isabel had chosen to end her life, so she was sent to hell. Angela couldn't believe it, but it was true. At the same time, her friend Hennessy also used the clues she heard to sneak into the hospital morgue. He hoped to find some useful information for John on Isabel's body. Hennessy grabbed Isabel's cold arm and began to use his ability. Then he quickly pulled his hand away. It seemed that something terrible scared Hennessy. He quickly took out some wine to drink, but the bottle was empty, so Hennessy hurriedly ran to the nearby convenience store. He frantically searched for wine but couldn't pour out a drop. Meanwhile, in the eyes of outsiders, every bottle was full of wine. At this moment, the high-level devil Balthazar slowly walked in from outside the door, and it was clear that he was the one who caused everything. Hennessy also knew that he didn't have much time left to live. Before he died, he used all his strength to stab his hand with a sharp object to leave the last information. Then wine naturally flowed out of Hennessy's mouth. Meanwhile, Angela was having dinner with John at a night restaurant when she suddenly received a phone call from the police station about a murder case. When the two arrived at the scene, John's face suddenly darkened because he saw that Hennessy had died of alcohol poisoning. He angrily asked why no one had called him. He paid attention to the information that Hennessy left behind, so he used a piece of cloth to remove the drawing on it. He immediately told this symbol to his friend Beeman and asked him to look up ancient books. At the same time, John hurriedly took Angela to the room where Isabel used to stay. That bracelet meant that the other party must have left a clue. Because they were twins, they were closely linked, so no matter how far the distance was, the bond between them would not break. John began to question Angela. John said that Isabel had been waiting for Angela because she knew she would come. Isabel wanted Angela to see and feel what she had seen and felt. John asked Angela what Isabel had done, but she said she couldn't know. He didn't believe her, and kept asking because he knew she had her own answer. Each pressing question wanted Angela to tell the truth. He wanted to know what Isabel had done, and what she was afraid of. Angela shouted that she didn't know. Finally, Angela came to the window and seemed to have thought of something. She slowly told John a series of information. This was a word game they used to play when they were kids, and it was related to the first letter of Corinthians, but there was no chapter 17. John said that of course there was none in the original Bible, but there were 21 chapters in the Hell Bible. He had placed the Hell Bible, which was wrapped in tar, which he had stolen from the Hell Church, at Beeman's place. Beeman had called the two of them and said that this book described another mystery. The world would not be ended by the hand of God, but would be reborn from the hand of the sinner. At the same time, Beeman said that the sins of the son would surpass the father. This made Angela curious about whose son it was, but as far as John knew, that person could not come to this world. Angela heard that and wondered if he was the son of God, but John denied it because he was the son of Satan, named Mammon. Mammon was not satisfied with his father not interfering in the human world, so he wanted to establish himself in the mortal world to build his own dark kingdom. A demon of Mammon's level who wanted to come to the mortal world had to meet two conditions. The first condition was a body with strong spiritual power as a medium. That is, Isabel was the chosen one, but she did not want to be a vessel, so she chose the negative way. The second condition was to have the support of divine power, that is, the power of God. Meanwhile, on Beeman's side, the machine behind him suddenly started working as if something had come to him. Beeman trembled as he spoke his last thoughts in his heart. He knew that John had always been atheist because he had never had a reason to believe in religion, but that did not mean that they did not trust John with this task. Noticing something unusual, John and Angela went to Beeman's place, but when they got there, they only found that he had passed away. Countless flies had taken over Beeman's body. The successive departures of his friends made John's heart heavy. He didn't want Angela to get involved anymore, but she was unusually determined. When she was young, she and her sister had also seen dirty things, but she chose to lie and leave her sister alone with the adults. She wanted John to find out what her sister had seen. Angela hadn't used her powers for many years, so if she wanted to recover her spiritual power, she had to rely on the power of water. John filled a bathtub with water and told Angela to lie in the bathtub. The water could block her senses and help her better activate her powers in her body. But as time passed, Angela still didn't feel any changes. She tried to stand up but was held back by John. At this moment, John's expression also became gloomy. Angela was scared, thinking that he was going to kill her, so she started struggling hard. The powerful spiritual energy suddenly appeared and quickly shattered the bathtub. The near-death experience that John had not warned her about also completely restored Angela's abilities. She could feel the lingering breath of darkness in the air. The two of them went to Beeman's office again. A Roman coin was also the silver coin that the high-ranking demon Balthazar often played with. It was clear that this guy was not only the one who helped Mom come to Earth, he was also the mastermind behind the murder of his intelligence officer and magical weapon supplier. John finally found the target of his anger, so his anger flared up completely. This was no longer a matter of meddling, but John had to trample these evil people from hell. He disassembled and reassembled the magical weapons that Beeman had collected over the years. He wanted to create a divine demon-killing weapon. Angela believed that if he killed the demon, it would affect the balance of the three worlds. John believed that since he killed his friend, the balance had been broken, and that him killing Balthazar was just restoring the balance. Through Angela's clue, the two drove to the building where Balthazar had entered. John also put Hennessy's amulet on Angela, because he needed to act alone next. Balthazar was in the classroom at the moment. He was still admiring the beauty of the human body he had entered. Suddenly, he discovered that the mirror in front of him began to distort. Balthazar was about to reach out to touch it when it exploded. Before John could defeat him, he attacked first and shouted loudly that he was born from fire. For a high-level devil who had bathed in hellfire, this little bit of fire was nothing. Even holy water could only tear his skin, making him feel much more refreshed. Angela, who was supposed to wait in the car, still decided to go up to help. Because her career as a police officer was destined to make her unable to sit still, she took off her coat and loaded the gun without realizing that her necklace had also been taken off. At the same time, Balthazar told John to stop struggling and enjoy himself. At the decisive moment, John took out another magical weapon, the golden fist that had been blessed by the Pope. He forced Balthazar to reveal the whole story of Mom's plan. But Balthazar would rather die than confess, because he was not afraid of being banished to his old home, hell. On the contrary, he was extremely afraid of going to heaven. After all, the sins he carried would definitely be burned forever by the karma of heaven. So when he saw John pull out the Bible and prepare to burn him to heaven, Balthazar finally panicked. As soon as John asked God for permission to allow his people to go to heaven, then he read a series of scriptures to force Balthazar to tell how Mammon came to this world. He quickly told him to stop reading and also confessed everything. The thing that allowed Mammon to come to this world was the spear, Guinness, which was the weapon that ended the life of God's son. At the same time, it was also the thing that created new life for the devil's son. At this time, Angela was always worried about John's safety, so she ran to find him. As soon as she saw Angela, Balthazar's eyes lit up because the devils were always looking for Angela everywhere, but he did not expect her to come by herself. Just when he was happy, he was shot to pieces by John. At this time, he revealed to Angela the information. Jesus did not die from being crucified, but he died under the long spear of a soldier, and that was the spear of fate. Angela was a Catholic, so she also understood the process of Jesus' suffering. John suddenly remembered Beeman's previous words, saying that Mom needed God's help. What he wondered was who had the power to help him. While talking, John suddenly discovered that the necklace around Angela's neck had disappeared. He could only blink and watch Angela being taken away by this mysterious power. Anger built up in John's chest. Wanting to know where Angela was taken, he returned to the club's door. At midnight, the gatekeeper still wanted to follow the rules, but he punched him straight in the face. Chas saw this and teased him. John went over and pulled out his divine destruction gun and shot straight into Midnight's room. This time, no matter what, he had to borrow that chair. Faced with the threat, Midnight was still as stubborn as an old man. He still adhered to the principle of neutrality to maintain balance. John got angry and cursed when he heard that, then rushed in to fight. Midnight was surprised that he dared to be rude in his territory, but he didn't care about that nonsense of neutrality. Only Midnight was still following the rules. But when he was still playing neutral, many people had already sacrificed themselves. For example, Hennessy or Beeman. They were also Midnight's friends, so John begged him to help. Although he might lose his life for this crazy crazy act, he didn't care. Midnight felt John's determination and agreed with him. Now the balance was broken, and Midnight had no reason to refuse anymore. The white cloth was lifted, and an electric chair appeared. This electric chair had handled more than 200 extremely evil people who had gone to hell, so it had the ability to cross the boundary between life and death. Midnight placed a basin of water at John's feet as a medium, and then he broke a light bulb. Although he was not ready, a series of images flashed through his eyes. He saw the man in red dig out the spear of fate, which was found in the ruined church. As soon as the man held the spear of fate, wherever he went, death would follow. They finally arrived at the mental hospital where Isabel had left. A group of demons had gathered here, and they were here to protect MR.Y's plan from succeeding. John then called Midnight to discuss the plan, and he knew that Angela was definitely being held in the mental hospital. Because John wanted to make sure that MR.Y's plan was completely destroyed, he decided to melt a golden magic weapon. He then crafted 12 powerful exorcism bullets. What John did not expect was that Chaz, who was usually invisible, was now skilled at crafting bullets. Chaz also came up with a bold idea. He wanted to throw the blessed cross into the hospital's water tank. By doing so, all the water in the fire hose would turn into holy water. It would help them weaken the demons' defenses. If you want to do good deeds, you have to sharpen your tools first. This ability to do things and decisive words made John look at Chaz with different eyes. Even Midnight smiled in appreciation. He promised that as long as Chaz returned alive, he would give him a membership card. When the job was done, the two of them quickly brought a large amount of magical artifacts to the mental hospital. They split up. Chaz put a blessed cross into the water tank, and John went straight to the room where the demons were gathered. When he saw them, he introduced himself. John didn't say much, but pulled out a chair. While all the demons looked at him with cold faces, he took out a lighter and activated the fire alarm. The holy water also took care of the demons immediately. Meanwhile, Angela was being held captive and drowned by a demon. At the moment of suffocation, she was immediately dragged into hell. Surrounded by carrion-eating demons, she did not dare to approach, because on a high platform not far away was a skinny and bony demon. It was slowly moving towards her. It was the son of Satan. When John and Chaz arrived, it was too late, and Angela had been successfully possessed by MR.Y. John cursed. He used all his strength to control Angela. He pressed his hands on her head and began to recite an exorcism spell. The spell quickly took effect. Although Angela's soul returned to her body, MR.Y. was not expelled, but instead parasitized Angela's stomach. He looked like he was about to break out of her body at any moment. John was completely helpless in this situation. Chaz glanced at John from the side, and finally, he made up his mind and lowered his head to recite an ancient exorcism spell. This made John look at Chaz in surprise, both strange and familiar, because even he had never mastered this kind of spell. This kind of spell was completely impossible to learn on his own. Fortunately, Angela gradually returned to normal in the end. John praised Chaz for doing a good job, but he didn't expect to be pulled and slammed against the ceiling. John ran to Chaz and also heard her last words. Watching Chaz die in front of him, John realized that there was always a mysterious person who had been helping MR.Y. in the dark. The fire of anger in his heart also exploded completely. He rolled up his sleeves and clasped his hands together. The Red King's seal was also his strongest magic weapon at the current stage, and it could destroy illusions and make all hidden demons appear in their true form. Gabriel thought John was too arrogant. John was not surprised to see Gabriel, because it seemed that evil had bribed the angel. Gabriel heard that and did not allow John to judge him. Gabriel was jealous that humans could receive forgiveness from God so easily. No matter how terrible their crimes were, they only needed to sincerely repent to return to God. This human privilege did not receive gratitude, but they quickly forgot the great sacrifice of Jesus. That was why she teamed up with MR.Y. to create dangers for the mortal world. If humans could survive the baptism of hell, then they would be worthy of God's love. John thought Gabriel was crazy, but she felt that the path of justice would begin tonight. Then, Gabriel blew a gust of air that sent John flying and crashing into the glass door. It was a simple blow, but it severely damaged John's internal organs. He knew he no longer had the strength to turn the situation around. In his dying moments, John weakly looked up at the sky and prayed for God to appear. He knew that God's love was never for him, and that the church did not welcome him, but he still asked God to pay attention to him a little, but God still did not respond. In the end, he was completely desperate, picked up a piece of glass on the ground and placed it on his wrist. Only when John's life was about to end did he meet Satan. If God did not want to help, then let Satan handle it. Soon after, a man in white appeared, who was the Lord Satan, who ruled all of hell. At this moment, Satan seemed quite pleased to see John fail, because he always wanted to personally come and take his soul. John also politely greeted Satan, whom he had heard about for a long time. Satan told him that he could do whatever he wanted, because he had plenty of time, and unexpectedly, John wanted to smoke a cigarette. Even when facing the legendary king of hell, John was still arrogant and unruly. Satan thought that John had cut his wrist too deeply, causing his tendons to break, making his fingers disobey him. So Satan took the initiative to help him light a cigarette. Satan laughed and asked him what he wanted to do. John told Satan that his son was in the next room, and that MR.Y not only colluded with the archangel Gabriel, but he also had the spear of destiny. If that happened, the agreement between Satan and God would be broken. Satan smiled and thought that this was another joke from John. John told him to go to the next room and see for himself. Satan had been waiting for him for more than 20 years, so why bother waiting another 20 seconds? Hearing this, Satan immediately appeared, making Gabriel stunned. Satan was extremely angry, because he always thought that he would definitely win the bet that God had predicted. But who would have thought that his son would actually do as God had predicted? That made Satan lose the bet with God. Even though he was the supreme archangel, Gabriel was still very afraid of his old friend standing before him. Gabriel took the initiative in the name of God, seeing that Satan teased that God had abandoned Gabriel. Immediately after that, the fire burned her angel wings. At the same time, Satan conveniently threw MR.Y's son back to hell. Gabriel only had time to call God's name, and then disappeared. After solving the problem, Satan returned to John's side. At this time, John made a request that he wanted to stay in hell forever, but in return, he wanted his sister Angela to be freed from hell, resurrected. Hearing that, Satan immediately agreed without hesitation, because in his mind, this was just a small matter. Satan looked up to the sky for a few seconds and said that it was done, and now John should follow him home. John also surrendered to fate. Satan whistled happily and pulled John to prepare to go to hell, but the more he pulled, the more he felt uneasy, because John's body became heavy, and in the end, he used all his strength but could not pull John. At this moment, a beam of holy light shone down from the sky. It was a sacrifice. It turned out that John's act of voluntary sacrifice was approved by God. Of course, sincere sacrifice was also qualified to go to heaven. Before leaving, John did not forget to provoke Satan. The majestic and awe-inspiring king of hell was teased by a small exorcist. This made Satan completely angry. Even if he could not take John away, he would not let John go so easily. Therefore, Satan quickly cured John's lung cancer and injuries. That was why he could not go to heaven. After everything was over, John only felt an unprecedented sense of relief. He turned back to Angela. Angela looked at the man who saved her from the fire, and her heart was moved. She shyly said thank you. John said it was okay and leaned closer to Angela. At this time, John saw Gabriel in the swimming pool with her wings completely burned, which also meant that she could no longer return to heaven, and Gabriel could only stay on earth as a normal person. This was also God's punishment for traitors. Gabriel was discouraged and still wanted to anger John so that he would attack her, but John only punched her. John told Gabriel that this was pain, so she had to get used to it. That night, John and Angela met on the rooftop. Angela also thought John had a gift to give her, but she did not expect that gift to be the spear of fate. John hoped that Angela could use her ability to go to a place where no one could find it. Angela agreed, and the atmosphere became ambiguous again. Although they had feelings for each other, the two had to leave in an awkward atmosphere. John Constantine's character image was very clear. He was stubborn, cold, rude, hot-tempered, and full of bad habits. Heaven and hell were not good places for John Constantine, but only the mortal world was the place that was truly suitable for him, because he was a selfish exorcist, but also liked to meddle in other people's business. Finally, John went to visit Chas's grave. When he turned around to leave, a pair of giant wings opened behind him. It was Chas, who was supposed to be dead, who suddenly appeared. A smile appeared on the corner of John's lips, because he suddenly understood that God had never abandoned him. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and see you again.